hear me? Do I need some mic? Can you hear me at the back, all right?
It makes it easier for a video.
Oh, I guess you're recording. Yeah, the video thing, right.
Yes. Selling this on eBay after video copies. All right. Well, it's great to be in Minnesota. I've never been to Minneapolis before. And man, you guys are nice. Like I was just saying to some people, like I came into the airport and talked to the information desk, talked to some people there, and I thought, man, am I back in Canada? You guys are so nice. So coming from Vancouver, I appreciate it. You know, it's not like New York where you slap across the head just for asking questions. All right, so I'm going to talk about conversion optimization and how we're approaching it. That's all we do. So this is just one slide about WiderFunnel, but we do everything for testing. We do conversion optimization strategy, wireframing, hypotheses, design, copywriting, HTML, results analysis, all of that stuff. So we do the full cycle testing, which is cool for us because we get to control the results and learn from every test. And that's all we've done since 2007 is testing. We don't do SEO, SEM, all that stuff. So I want to talk about what we're seeing in the conversion optimization space. First of all, dissatisfaction with conversion rates is growing. Year over year, more people are saying that they know they need to improve their conversion rates. But at the same time, fewer people are able to improve their conversion rates. Year over year, 5% more people are reporting that they have not been able to successfully improve their conversion rates. These are digital marketers. Digital marketers. And that's why this year, conversion optimization has now risen to the #1 priority, tied with content marketing for digital marketers. So it's the priority. You're in the right place. This is the right thing to be focusing on right now. It's actually surpassed social media, which I never thought would happen. So we're really excited about that because social media just sucks. All right, so I can't talk to everyone's results, but this is what we're seeing. Okay, so it does work. We're seeing average conversion rate lifts of 23% for e-commerce and 49% for lead gen for people that engage in a conversion optimization strategy. So that kind of result also, when you think about it, goes directly to top line revenue. This is traffic you've already paid to get to your website, right? You've already paid for your paid search, you've already paid for your PR, all of the activities, now they're converted. That's real dollars. All right, so I'm going to show you an example. I got a few examples loaded in here, and then we'll get you to test your skills on how well you can guess which one won. So this is an example for Wine Express, where it's a wine enthusiast company. You've probably heard of Wine Enthusiasts. They have magazines, so they're fairly well known. This Wine Express, they've got a million emails they send out every day to their subscribers, where they promote their wine of the day. They got a wine of the day offer worth 99-cent shipping. So they had this one landing page. It was a dynamic template landing page from their email campaigns, and it was the most important revenue driver for the business. They do a lot of paid search as well. They use this landing page template for all of their search activity. So let's look at a couple examples of variations, and so these are two variations we tested. I'm going to get you to guess which one won. All we did, and identify here what we isolated. Variation A has the call to action. It says our price. It's got the add to cart. This one has a large on sale now with the sale price and the larger add to cart button. So, how many think variation A won? Okay, how many going for B? All right. Good guess. Except that it lost. Variation A won. That's weird. And a 5% conversion rate lift, you might think, okay, 5%. Like, what's that? That's not a big deal, right? Well, it's 5% of the business, but it also turned out that variation had a 41% increase in revenue per visitor over the control. Here's another example. This was another isolation test where we had this element in the header to create urgency. So this one had a countdown timer. It says order in the next however many hours, minutes, and seconds to get 99-cent shipping. This one just eliminated that. Everything else was the same. All right, so who's going for A? Creating urgency. Okay, B. Okay, now we're about a 50-50 split here.
You're creating doubt.
Yeah. And who has decided not to vote? Yeah, you've got some abstainers. All right. The wise ones in the audience. So this one won with eliminating that countdown timer. That's a 7% increase in their conversion rate to sale. So what's happening here, right? This is kind of weird. If you've read any blog posts about conversion optimization, if you've been reading HubSpot and all these other folks that give you best practices, you would not think that these ones would win? Well, they have now a potential insight about their target audience. Their target audience is sophisticated wine buyers. They're high average income, they're connoisseurs, and it turns out that anything that smelled of marketing turned them off and hurt their conversion rates. What we actually found when we did redesign testing, now this is completely different than their control page, because we had done a whole bunch of dramatic redesign tests, and these were just some of the isolations we were tweaking with. We found that the biggest correlation to sales was tying this video close to the call to action. That video was the sommelier's tasting notes, right? And it turns out that's what the people were coming to the landing page to find out. They wanted to find out, what's this wine about? What's the sommelier going to say about today's wine? And then they would buy more cases, and that's why the average order value went up. So now they know a little bit more about their customers, and they can now optimize the rest of their website and marketing to serve their particular target audience and not just go for the schlocky quick win that you might see on the best practices blog posts. Okay, so today what we're going to do is talk about how to lift your search marketing results consistently on an ongoing basis, not just implementing these best practices, because best practices are dead. We have buried them. They are gone, just like SEO today apparently is dead. SEO Moz is changing their name. So the only best practice you can keep is that you need to test. Test everything to find out what actually works and rely on tested results. Because when you think about it, there are thousands of best practices you've probably heard, right? There's many that you're seeing on websites. There are consistent elements that websites have. I'm going to show you some examples. But where did they come from? The technology and availability for widespread testing has really only been available for the last few years. And yet a lot of these principles are they've been around for a lot longer. So where'd they come from? They weren't tested, right? They probably came from someone's best guess at what works, someone's intuition, or what common sense would say should work. Make the price bigger and people will buy more, or add rotating homepage banners because that'll give you lots more messages out there. Here's another example with Hair Club. You're probably familiar with Hair Club, and they have hair restoration, and so this was a landing page from their page. Now these guys are experienced direct marketers. They've been doing DRTV, right, direct response radio, for many years. They've tested lots of stuff. And so this was their landing page from their paid search. Now we tested a bunch of variations. Here are two of them. Variation A, you'll notice something different. We went with the aspirational approach. So we have rotating images of beautiful women, the lifestyle that you'd all expect when you have a full head of hair, right? The kind of experiences that I have every day. And then variation B was a static content approach, where it was just copywriting about the options. Everything else, the videos were the same, the main elements were the same. So how many think variation A, sexy, aspirational stuff, won? Okay, now some static content copy. All right, we've got about a 60-40 for static now. Well, it turns out that did win at a 20% increase in conversion rate. Now, what's interesting, because in a lot of their other media, of course, this is what they use, right? We go for the aspirational, sexy scenario thing. You've probably seen their ads, but this is giving them another perspective that maybe at this point in the funnel, or maybe throughout their marketing, that's not what people are looking for. Maybe people are just looking for a solution, right? And maybe they're looking for the options that they have available. Maybe this is a little bit far-reaching. Maybe if you oversell sex, it can do something else, right? Well, it actually turns out that it's a little distracting. So, especially on your landing pages. Right, so, yeah, okay, so here's another example. This is, you've heard, if you've been to any conversion conferences, search marketing conferences, you've probably heard the advice that if you have secure symbols, if you've got McAfee, Norton symbols, you should make them as prominent as possible on your website. You're paying for these things, right? You should put them in the header, put them by your calls to action. Well, when we tested that, we found that overemphasizing this security actually decreased sales for this e-commerce retailer. So this was on their persistent call to action, right? So if you've got an e-commerce catalog site, you've got this part of every page in your template that says, what you have in your cart, and you should check out now. Well, putting the McAfee symbol there decreased their sales. I like to, look at other examples of that. I mean, this guy clearly is going full guns blazing with security, right? You've got every symbol known to man. But does it make you want to shop with this retailer? Like, does that make you trust them? It doesn't make me, feel trustworthy, right? It makes me think that they're perhaps protesting too much. Like, why are they making such a big deal about security? Is it because they're actually shysters here trying to, use some tricks to, I don't know. It doesn't make me feel secure. So, sometimes we try and reinvent the wheel online. And I like to look at the example of offline retailers sometimes because they've been perfecting the shopping experience for hundreds of years. Look at this example. You've got warm, natural lighting, plush carpets. I mean, you can almost smell the leather, right, wafting out and inviting you to come into this shopping experience. They're creating a comfortable experience where the merchandise is the center. So would you rather shop here or in a high security environment? Where would you rather take out your wallet, right? Well, they make you take out your wallet here, but it's not because you want to, okay? And that's the same thing with online sales, with e-commerce. The more you emphasize security, and sometimes you can actually create anxiety when it's not a question they're asking at that moment. So don't answer people's questions when they're not asking it. It just puts more anxiety in their minds. Okay, here's another example. This is Forever 21. Went to their website a little while ago, did some research, and imagine yourself, this is how we do conversion optimizations, we're putting ourselves in our prospect's shoes. So you're a shopper, you're coming to Forever 21, and maybe you're looking for pants, right? So you arrive at the page, and the first thing your prospect, when they arrive on your website, has to do is figure out how your website works. Because every website is different. They've got a different navigation, they've got a different structure, different wording. So you got to look around and say, okay, where am I going to find pants? I'm looking at plus size, beauty, love, I don't know. But now I've got this leather offer sort of blazing in my face. And, okay, $17.80, that's actually maybe a pretty good deal. I'd like to check that out. So how do I do that? Oh, there's a sort of triangle sideways arrow thing. Maybe that's where I should click. That might be interesting. And just as I'm about to click to find out about this leather offer, it changes, right? And now I'm looking at pants. Oh, great, that's what I was here for. But now I'm kind of interested in that leather offer. That actually seems pretty cool. But wait, no, I'm here for pants. So now I've got cognitive dissonance. I'm trying to figure out what do I actually want. I've got two things that are competing. And just as I'm about to say, hang on, I'm going to go back to that one, changes again. Now I've got long sleeves, and then I've got something else. So this is one of the most common elements of websites. You've seen it on B2B websites, B2C, e-commerce, lead gen, all over the place. We've tested this many times. Every time we test it, it loses. So where did this come from? It's a best practice. Well, it's a best practice for art directors because it solves their problem, right? Their problem is, I'm out of space. So what am I going to do? Oh, I'll just make a new space, right? But they're not solving the customer's problem. The customer is confused. And often, even worse, these things are used to promote things that are totally irrelevant to the prospect. They arrive on the website, and it talks about your annual event for your company. And they're there trying to find a solution for their real business need. They don't care about your annual event right now. That's not what they're there for, right? They need to understand, what's your breadth of products? How do I get in to understand the solutions you have for me? So, I sort of ended up, I think, making an observation about marketers. Since, for hundreds of years, we've understood that the scientific method is the basis for all of the advancements we've made in our society, right? We've got infant mortality decreased. Life expectancy is dramatically increased. We have more education. We know more today than we ever have in the history of mankind. We have devices. We've got iPhones. We can talk to each other across the planet. It's incredible. It's all because of science. And yet marketers are this amazing subset of humanity that refuses to test themselves, right? They believe that their gut instinct is so powerful that they understand their customer and they don't need to test. Clearly that's not true, and you're here because you're one of the select few that understand that testing can actually improve your results. But it's still a frustration because marketers are not there in general. Marketers don't believe in testing and they hate being tested. I came from the ad agency world. Man, some of the big agencies, DB, TBWA, some of these large agencies, and if there's anyone that tests in that company, they're sort of shoved into a basement in the corner, because the client needs them to have a direct marketing group, but they're going to sit down there and we're not going to give you any perks or even get you in front of the client, right? You're there for the pitch and then let's shove you away because they don't want their ideas tested. They want to win cleverness awards. Okay, so you need to test, but how you test is really important. There's a structure that gets you the best results. I'm going to share a number with you. 200%. That represents the value of a structured testing process. I didn't just make up that number. This is from a study done by eConsultancy, where they looked at companies that were doing conversion optimization and found that those that reported having a structured process for their conversion optimization were twice as likely to also report large increases in sales from their program. So that alone was a huge factor in improving their conversions. Okay? Not just randomly testing. And a lot of people, we've been talking about conversion optimization since 2007, and we've heard a lot of advice, people basically saying, if you haven't tested, just go and start testing. Just do something. Just test anything, right? And unfortunately, that's bad advice that a lot of people have gotten into. Because what happens when you start with just testing anything is you're probably starting with the wrong things. And then you end up wasting organizational support, that slight flicker of optimism you had about getting testing involved. And then when you test the wrong things and get bad results, support dies. Trying to do something the second time is even harder, right? So of course we've developed our own process for how to test, and this is our sort of an overview of our structured process. I can't go through the whole thing today, we don't have that much time, but I'm going to show you two of the key elements that you can take in this process and use in your organization. And the frameworks I've shown you, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, the reason I show this is if you're in B2B or B2C or e-commerce, lead gen, affiliate marketing, subscription, whatever, we've probably worked in that industry, and the frameworks work. Because what we found is that people are people, regardless of if they're in Epson or they're at SAP, buying toner for their company or buying a BI solution, or if they're in their basement buying socks for their kids, right? Everyone processes the web the same way. They process information the same way, and these principles are universal. So there's two phases to conversion optimization. And we can get you the slides after, so you don't have to take all the notes or whatever, but it's very essentially simple at this point. Phase one is to create a conversion plan, and phase two is to run the plan and do continuous iterative testing. And so what we found is, there's a need for the plan. In years past, we've gone into organizations and they just believe they wanted testing. So we've gone in and just done testing. But without actually getting a full picture, in the past, we used to get sort of spotty results, right? And we weren't sure if we were going to get good results. And now we don't go in without creating a plan first and making sure we've prioritized where to test, how to get the insights from tests that lead into better results in the future. So you need a plan because you're going to be spending a lot of effort in conversion optimization. It's not something you just snap your fingers, open up an AdWords account, you're golden, right? You've got to think about what to test, create alternative pages, alternative templates, basically 2 websites that you're going to create, and test them. And then you're going to do that again and again. It takes some effort. So you want to make sure that you're putting that effort in the right place. So I'm going to show you a framework to allow you to do that. It's called the PI framework. So I'll show you in a second, but first, to understand why we're thinking about this. There's 3 general levels to your conversion funnel. Okay, the top end of the funnel is the persuasional end. This is your landing pages. This is where people enter your website. And this is where you convince them that you've got the right products generally for them to buy. That it's going to solve their needs. You've got to get them into the funnel. And the next level is the informational end. So thinking about the prospect, They've understood, yeah, okay, you're on my radar, this is the right place to be. Now I need to get all the details to satisfy myself, answer my questions that I'm going to get what I want here. And then at the end is the transactional level. This is the conversion page. This is where the funnel actually happens, where the transaction happens. You know, you've got your shopping carts, your form fields. This is where the rubber meets the road. And a lot of people are focused on the top end, on the landing pages, especially in search. You know, a lot of search agencies will control the landing pages, but not control the rest of the funnel at all, or even touch that or have any insight into that. But the landing page is just the top sliver of the work that needs to be done with these prospects. The rest of the website, the rest of the experience, and all the other touch points are very important as well. So we want to consider all of these when we're looking at prioritizing the effort. So I'm going to show you some examples, and this is an example from Iron Mountain. We have a history of testing with Iron Mountain that goes back, we've been testing for 3 years with them on their landing pages and throughout their website. And they came to us with a serious problem 3 years ago. They have 17,000 web pages, plus their landing pages, and they need to optimize this experience. Their lead gen was disappointing. Their paid search manager knew they needed to invest in this. But where do you start with 17,000 pages, right? So here's what we did for them. We developed something called the PI framework, and there's more detail about it in the book. So you've got a copy, that's great. You can go in and read more. I'll show you the high level here. Essentially, we're looking at 3 factors to prioritize what to test: the potential, importance, and ease. The potential is how much improvement can you make on that page or that template. So looking at the site template-wide. That's the potential. And we look at heuristics and voice of customer and web analytics data to understand where are the pages that need to be improved. Essentially, the question to ask yourself is, how crappy is this page? That gives you your potential rating, okay? And then importance is how much impact does this page or this template have on the business? So you look at traffic volume, you look at the cost of the traffic, right? So these are going to be your high-cost keywords, your high-cost ad groups, high-volume pages, right? The landing pages that are driving a lot of revenue. Those are the important ones. So that's going to bump that up in the importance ranking. And then the ease. That's important to understand. There's technical ease and there's political ease, right? And as any good navigator of organizational structure, you understand that they're just as important as each other, right? So that's why often we're avoiding the homepage. Because the CEO is looking at the homepage and they won't let you test there. But that might be one of the most important pages. It's okay, just wait. Go under the radar, get some results, and then you can move up once you've got some credibility. So then you can rank all of these and come up with actually an objective ranking. And we do this all the time with our clients and come out with something that looks exactly like this, where we'll have all of the different test opportunities ranked by pi, and then get your average rating, and then that now becomes a discussion point. If something's lower down than someone thinks it should be, well then we can go back and say, okay, which one of these factors do you think it should have a higher rating for? Should it be higher potential than this other crappy page? Or should it be higher importance than this other one that we're spending half our budget on, right? Where should we spend our time? And it actually becomes a really useful exercise. We started a conversion strategy with a client not too long ago. And they had done a bunch of homework beforehand, which is great. Like it made some of the work easier. They came with a list of pages that they believed we should start testing with. And it was based on being the lowest performing landing pages of the highest cost ad group. Right? So that's a pretty good place to start, but it didn't take into account all of the other factors. And so when we ended up looking at all of the other pages on the website, they came out like 6th or 7th on the priority list. So if we had started there, we would have ended up probably spending 5 or 6 months on pages that weren't as important. So I can't stress how important it is to start with this and make sure that the effort is being prioritized. Okay, so that's part of the strategy. And then the rest of the strategy is, of course, understanding your customer, your target audience, really getting into their shoes in their head, doing some user testing and understanding web analytics. All of that stuff is important too. But then, once you've got that, you can start testing. So now you know where to test. Now what, right? You're staring at a page. You may have been staring at this landing page for a long time because you were spending a lot of money driving traffic to it. But how do you come up with ideas to test? So what I'm going to talk about is exactly how to do that. Because this is true. The most important thing you have to do in the whole process is step one, understanding the questions to ask. It's essentially about creating hypotheses. And we're talking in scientific terms here, but a hypothesis is just a question you ask of your customers. Simple as that. So this is where we spend a lot of our time, actually, is developing hypotheses, developing questions to ask of customers. This is the framework we use. Some of you may have seen the lift model around. Familiar with the lift model? Yeah, a few of you seen it around. So it's sort of getting popular in the small niche of conversion optimization. But essentially, what it shows are the 6 conversion factors that you can use that are affecting your conversion rate right now. And if you identify all of the aspects in these 6 factors, you can create powerful hypotheses that will get results. All right? So, talk about it for a moment. Essentially, the core of the lift is the value proposition. That determines your potential for improving your conversion rate. And you probably have a definition of value proposition that you think about. Everyone has their own. I like to think of it as an equation that goes on in the prospect's mind. Between this, sort of like a balance beam, right? Between this full set of perceived costs of taking action, and on the other side, the perceived benefits of taking action. And there's a perceived element there where it's not just about the tangible. It's not just about the feature list that you're offering, or the costs, or the shipping, all of that tangible stuff. There's also the trust, right? The brand experience, the credibility that you have with them, your graphic design, all of the external endorsements that you have. That all creates your whole value proposition set. And if that's strong, you've got a lot of potential for improving your conversion rate. And then the other factors support or detract from it. So we look at relevance. The relevance is the relevance of the source media. And you've probably seen a lot about relevance, thinking about search, right? You want to match your inbound keywords in your ads to your landing pages. You want to keep your scent trail all the way through. That's an important part of maximizing conversion rates. You've probably heard that, right? You tested that? All right. So you can test there for sure. Relevance to the source media, relevance to the prospect's needs. Then you look at clarity of the presentation, right? Which is quite a large aspect. There's clarity of the eye flow, clarity of the imagery and the copywriting, the call to action clarity, the pricing. All of these aspects are impact clarity. It's probably one of the biggest things we see going wrong. Then anxiety, we already saw examples of that, right? Anything that creates uncertainty in the prospect's mind about taking action. Anything that gives that little twinge of doubt. It's uncertainty. It could be things that are on the page or missing from the page, asking for too much information, right? Putting the security symbols too prominently. That can create anxiety. And then there's distraction. This is another one of the biggies. Anything that redirects attention from the primary message or the primary call to action. So look at your landing pages and think, does that need to be there? If there's a you might also like section, does that need to be there? Is that helping them make the decision to make this purchase, or does that try to get them off into another decision? Right? So carefully think about all of the, I often think, advise marketers, look at your pages, cut your copy in half, and then cut your copy in half again. It's probably about the right length. And I think that came from Krug, the Don't Make Me Think book. It's a great book, by the way. You should definitely pick that one up if you haven't. And then urgency is, why should I act now, right? And that's the whole driving force behind it. Get them to make a decision, buy, take action before they flip to the other tab on their browser and look at your competitors, because they're all open. So this is the lift model that we use to actually analyze every project that we come to, every test that we run it through the lift model. And what it does is it gets you to think about your prospects' problems that they're facing, and not just to come up with your list of tips and tricks and check them off and try them out. It gets more strategic. So here's an example where Iron Mountain, one of their landing pages that we started with, this was a landing page for data protection and recovery, right? So it's about protecting, backing up your data. So take a look at this for a second and think about, what would you improve or test with this landing page? How would you go about coming up with ideas to test it? Right? You might think about, well, I've seen blog posts that say that green buttons work better, so maybe we should test that, or, you know, orange headlines often work really well. Okay, so let's take a look at some, sort of joking. Quiet group. All right, that's okay, we'll get to the beers again soon. All right, so let's take a look at some of the things that we found, and then I'll show you some of the test variations. So, you know, there's a bunch of issues here. There's multiple products mentioned in the copy without actually paying off the detail. And that can create some questions in the person's mind. And we see this a lot where marketers will often mention something in passing and assume that people know what they're talking about, but they haven't explained it, and then it just creates unclosed questions. You want to close everything up on the landing page. Tie it up neatly. The headline doesn't say backup, even though that's what the ad said. That's what the ad groups were called. It was called backup recovery, right? That's a 101 mistake. The relevance, the image doesn't reinforce the backup message. It's kind of clever, right? But it's not directly relevant. It's sort of using an analogy. No one actually puts a padlock on their laptop. And whenever you use analogies on landing pages, you're making people work. And you're taking up bandwidth that they could be using to understand your value proposition. It's bad news. The large header graphic pushes content below the fold. The contact us contains no benefits. Like, why are we contacting you? Right? This copy layout, it may seem like a small thing, and I have to have people ask me, like, why are you worried about this layout, like alignment? It's not a big deal. But again, what it does is and you know, the art directors will love me for this, but it does creates visual confusion, and it creates more processing power needed to understand the actual content. The more you can strip away that extra processing needed to really understand what you're saying, the better. They'll have more space in their mind. We're just like, you know, old 386 computers. We've only got limited bandwidth up here to try and process this data that's coming at us. Some of you are probably too young to ever know what a 386 computer is. All of a sudden, feel terrible. Okay. Call to action is not reinforced above and below the fold. Anxiety, look at this privacy policy. Understand my information will be used in accordance with Iron Mountain's privacy policy. There's a lot of these out there, especially in enterprise B2B companies. I see this all over the place. We had this with SAP as well. There's no offer associated with a form fill. What are they getting out of this? No credibility indicators. It's Iron Mountain. They've got all kinds of credibility, but they're not emphasizing it. Okay, so we've identified a whole bunch of problems. The next step in the process is to take those weaknesses and flip them into strengths. It's easy, and that now becomes a hypothesis. Now you can test this. So, if the headline doesn't say backup, well, changing the headline to include backup, that's something you can test. You can isolate them. You can try that out. All right, and you go through the list, and usually what we'll end up with, and this is where the real art of the strategist comes in, where we've got a list of 20 or 30 lift points, and we've got them all into hypotheses, and now we've got to decide which ones do we test, which ones do we isolate, which ones do we cluster together to make these sort of swing for the fences variations. And this really, there's no rule for this. This comes from experience. The strategist really understanding the goals of the company, understanding what will generate marketing insights, what should we isolate that we can leverage in the future for future tests. And that's an important part of the decision-making process for planning these tests. So, I'm going to show you 3 variations that we tested here. This is variation A, lightbox form. So obviously this one is what we call a variable cluster. Totally redesigned against the control, right? New copy, new layout, new design, everything. We left the image because of organizational constraints. Just leave it at that. All right, so new copy, and then when you clicked on the button, you got a lightbox form that came up. Okay? Variation B, we were isolating, embedding the form on the page versus having it in a lightbox. This is a question people are always asking. Where should my forms actually work? Should it be on a separate page? Should it be in a lightbox? Should it be embedded? So we've tested this a whole bunch of times and found some interesting rules about which forms you should embed and which ones shouldn't. This one we tested the offer. So the layout was the same as A. It was isolated against the download versus the contact offer. Which one was more important? Yeah?
Which short form should you embed and which form shouldn't you?
That's the
You just teased us.
$10,000 question, isn't it?
Literally $1,000.
I'll tell tell you in a moment.
All right.
All right? You'll pay for your ticket right there. Okay, so there's 3 variations. Now, which one what? Of course, if you're sitting in a typical organization, right, you're in your boardroom, your digital agency comes in and they've got their concepts for the most important page in your website. This is your landing page, you know, it's their throwaway project for them. They're going to come in and show you the concepts. How do you choose which one goes live? You have 3 concepts on your boardroom table. What do? Well, some people, of course, are using the hippo method, right?
Depends how much traffic you get.
It depends how much traffic you have. Yeah, right.
That's the one.
Now, do you use the hippo method instead? Is that what you? No, okay, of course not.
Try not to.
You wouldn't do that. The hippo, if you're not familiar with Avinash, he created the hippo concept, the highest paid person's opinion. Right, they're the ones in the boardroom that point to the one they like. That's the one that goes live. Right? Other people are using the black turtleneck method. Right? The guy with his sunglasses in the boardroom, he knows. So he points at the one that goes live. Right? But of course, you're smarter than that, so you're going to use the scientific method. Right? And we're going to test it. All right, so we found out. Wow. That was a 404% conversion rate lift. That was 4 times the leads. What's really cool is when you're sitting in the office and the client calls up and says, you know what, my AdWords manager just came walking down, no, my sales manager, sorry, just came walking down the hall and said, what the hell did you do to the website? We can't answer the phones. Right? There's too many leads coming in. So that's a good call to get. So to answer your question, with shorter forms, we found, especially with B2B, embedding it on the page works better. Usually 6 fields or less. If they're longer forms, put it on a separate page. You'll get the momentum going, and then they'll be more likely to fill out the form.
Thank you.
There you go. Yeah. We've seen that work well too, yeah. Yeah, we tested that with B2B and found that to work. And with B2C as well, you know, often splitting forms up. We had one client that had, I think, 12 steps in their form. And so there were certain rules with which forms you put, which fields you put first to get momentum going, and which ones you split up, and how many, all that kind of stuff. There's definitely a science to the transactional end. Yeah. So that one won, and that's, you know, great, obviously, for them. And so we ran through a whole bunch of tests, right, with Iron Mountain. We did a whole bunch of landing pages, and then actually there's more detail. There's a case study on our website that you can go and download. It's free on our website. Actually, if you just Google WiderFunnel Iron Mountain case study, I'm sure it'll pop up. And it goes through more of the tests that we ran for them. But essentially, after running all of these tests, we built a playbook for them. And this is an important part as well, especially if you're in a larger organization. You may be working on your paid search office, right? You're managing your landing pages, you're doing a bunch of optimization, you're learning a bunch of stuff, but the rest of the company doesn't really know what's going on there. And so we found that this can be very helpful for the search marketer, is to organize events within the company, right? Share the knowledge around, invite stakeholders from various places, and then have a way to codify this knowledge. So we created something called a playbook, the Insights Playbook, where we'll put together all of the test results into one document or one area that they can then use as a briefing document for, you know, their other agencies or other departments, or to hand off, you know, in case you get hit by a bus or that sort of thing, to keep the knowledge within the organization. All right, so as I said, the number one secret to CRO success is all about committing to continuous improvement, because you will have failures. And I haven't gone into all of I have a different presentation about why there are no losing tests. You can't ever lose with conversion optimization, because you can always learn from the ones that didn't work. But if you continue to test and improve, you will always win eventually. So, last year we were talking about, I think, gurus. Everyone was trying to be a guru in conversion optimization. And this year, everyone's trying to be a ninja. So, to be a conversion ninja, you need to be testing more. So this is the false belief that a lot of people have. And I have a lot of people questioning and saying, when have you optimized enough? Because there's this law of diminishing returns that everyone believes in, right? That if you keep investing in something, eventually you won't get a return on your effort. That's not in practice what we see. And it looks actually more like this, where you've got a continuous improvement in the expectations of your customers. The web is evolving, your competitors are evolving, they're all improving. By testing, you can stay ahead of the curve. Your competitors might be down here in the quagmire somewhere. You can stay ahead of them, but the moment you stop testing and improving, you go flat, you go stagnant. And that's the real scenario. There is no law of diminishing returns in conversion optimization. The question you have to ask yourself is, when should I stop testing? Okay, when should you stop deciding? When should you stop deciding that whether this or this, what should I do? You test it, right? It becomes embedded into your genes. All right, so you want to be a ninja? One more tests. There we go. Okay, so I do have, I'll mention to you that we do have one spot right now. If you want to work with WiderFunnel, if it's something that's a good fit for you, you can find out. We do have a slot open for our conversion optimization system, and just recently opened up actually. We've hired and trained a new strategist. We've got a new team in place. It's cool. So to find out if you qualify, you can send us the URL, like evaluated. Send it to hello@widerfunnel.com, and you can have a qualification interview. So that's how it works. If you're interested, I know someone usually asks to get that information. And you can, of course, get the free book, Compliments of Josh and MnSearch, and really happy that you guys were able to do that. That's will be an awesome, hopefully, value to you. And we have time for questions as well. So I believe. Yeah.
Have you split tested whether being a ninja or a guru is better?
Yeah, and this year it's ninja, but we're seeing sensei coming up. Yeah, and next year I think that's going to take over. Yeah.
On a landing page, do you find that any trust is lost when there's no access to the menu for the rest of the site?
On a landing page without having the menu, right? Yeah, and we've seen both sides of that. The jury's a little bit out, but I think it depends on context is what we're seeing. And usually what seems to happen is if you've got high credibility as a company already, so you've got brand recognition, strong brand, then removing the navigation has no negative effect. It can be positive. If you need to create credibility, then sometimes navigation gives this sort of sense that, oh, you're a real company because you actually have more than one web page. You know, as if that actually signifies you're a real company. I don't know, but it sort of gives, at least you've put in the effort of writing more than one page and trying to scam people. So yeah, it tends to lend credibility to unknown brands. That's what we found. Yeah.
How many clients have to scrub on the form?
How many, sorry?
They like to scrub the user on the form versus once they get the data, they scrub the lead.
Scrub the lead, you mean validating the form fill?
Yep. Well, no, like somebody, they have a client who has 20 fields.
Yes.
They want to scrub it in advance. So they want to get all the information possible.
Yeah, well, and you know what?
And we can't get them to see the light that we need to reduce that.
Right, so you're asking, they're prioritizing getting all the information up front versus trying to find out more information after the lead's been generated.
I think it's a time saver.
I think it's a time saver. Well, that's probably the worst reason to do that. So if you're doing it because you want to have more qualified leads and you want to reduce the labor for sales, sure, fine. But that can actually be tested because what you can do is, of course, reduce the number of fields, test it, and you'll find a conversion rate delta, right? And then you can actually calculate the conversion to sale and how much extra money did you make from having that shorter, and then you do the ROI calculation.
So they allowed us to create a separate form on a separate page, a shorter field, but kind of the example you gave is a conversion ended up being less than the inline form.
Right.
So, and they only allowed us to test for 2 weeks, so the results were.
It wasn't quite
So
statistically significant.
There's still some.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's another good point, is that the only thing worse than not testing is testing and getting invalid results that aren't statistically significant, because then you're actually going to create decisions based on data that's not accurate. And you can actually bake in bad ideas into the company, because now everyone believes it. It's got data. It's got to be true. Right. Yeah?
So you've got only a limited number of pages that you're allowed to measure, and then you decide you have a really bad design issue. You improve the design in one part of the site, the rest of it doesn't look so great. How does that play out with
Yeah.
your experience?
yeah, the consistency can almost be more important than an improvement. It depends. It's true. It can, and we've tested. We ran into that early on, actually, when we create some dramatic improvements at the front end, or landing page or home page or whatever, and we would see that we'd have an increase in people going to the next step, but then we'd lose them. We'd have the decrease in the actual conversion rate because there's this dissonance between the entry page, which looks great and it's well designed, and then the next one is like this crappy old table-based page, right? And then they lose trust, creates huge anxiety. So it can counterbalance anything. Now, once you've proven that the first page works better, then maybe you've got some rationale to go in and fix the rest of it. So it might be worth a test, but yeah, you can often run into that problem. So sometimes it's better to fix the problems that aren't design related first, and that will make some improvement without giving the inconsistency. Yeah.
Oftentimes you'll see that there's a lot of, you can kind of boil down the issues into kind of the, can they do it, the accessibility, usability side, and then the will they do it, the kind of the persuasive side. In your experience, what do you find that you get the most bang for your buck for, the accessibility or the persuasion? And then if one is more than the other, is there certain phases of projects where you find that you uncover certain stuff faster than others?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's insightful. It's something that I just cut out of here. We didn't talk about it today, but I talked about what conversion optimization is. It's the intersection of those two things. Call it persuasion marketing, user experience, and the scientific method. And that's where, and so definitely there's probably equal weighting depending on the situation between those two elements. But a lot of people that come at conversion come from the marketing perspective and think it's all about persuasion. And others that come from usability think it's all about just checking off the user experience boxes, and that's how you do it. But you have to when you take that holistic view, then you can really see the things that cross over too. Because sometimes there's elements that are both. Like a button, is that UX or is it persuasion? Sometimes it's both, sometimes it's either. So yeah, but I think the key is to look at it with the broad perspective rather than siloing. Is really where we're, I think, seeing the best results. Yeah. Yeah.
So for someone whose boss is totally enamored with rotating banners on the homepage, and now we know it doesn't work. How do you get around that? He's just in no pickle. He's saying, we do this. Okay, we've got all these three buckets of information we want all on the homepage. How do you talk them out of this? I mean, is there someone that?
Well, there's.
Tell me how to design things.
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, first of all, it sounds like there's a cultural issue there, right? If there isn't a reliance on data to make decisions from the beginning, then that's a difficult problem.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. So if he looks at data, then he or she can send him to my blog post, and it gives all of the rationale why this is a terrible experience. Failing that, of course, you might want to avoid the homepage to begin with. Like I said, sometimes starting with a skunkworks test where no one's looking. Like if you start at a landing page or on the product page, you can put a picture of a flying spaghetti monster and no one will notice, right? But try it on the homepage and you'll get in trouble. So try it on a smaller page, or not smaller, but under the radar. It might still have a lot of traffic. And if you get a win, now you've got rationale. You can say, look, this is dollars. And why don't we test this? Because someone says that this doesn't work, so let's just give it a try, right? What can it hurt? Put something up there for a week, it's a test, no big deal. Yeah, other than changing, like cultural change, that's a whole other thing, right? I mean, yeah.
I thought you were going to wow me.
No, sorry, I dropped the ball on that one. Yeah.
So you started off, you had this really nice opening where you called into questions and direct marketing best practices, the kind of thing that you find in any copywriting book, which is really interesting. And I'm wondering if over the course of working with so much data and so many tests, you've started to come up with your own rules of thumb for what's effective for certain demographics and so on.
Yeah, no, certainly. And we keep it locked in a vault.
Yeah, if that was the $10,000 question, then this is like the. Yeah.
No, but in seriousness, it is more about the principles. Certainly, we find a lot of tactics that we just find work most of the time, and so those are the ones we'll pull out quickly, right? And yeah, we're building our database of test results that we just tap into, and I mean that clearly we're going to store that. But what we find that's more important is the principles of how people look for information, and it's really a lot of it is baked into Lithball. It is thinking about how are we experiencing this page in terms of clarity? How would they be experiencing it in terms of distraction, anxiety, relevance? And thinking through that can actually give much better insights than just that list of tactics, because you're thinking in context. It's actually taking into consideration that unique target audience and unique situation. And it actually helps a lot more as well in interpreting results, because now you can think, like with Wine Express, if you weren't thinking about the customer, you wouldn't think about why are they responding to a smaller button better? Well, it's because they have a unique target audience. It's not because that's a generalized principle that everyone should shrink their buttons. No, it's that in that context, that works better.
How does testing for conversion differ from when you're testing just straight up increase conversion rate compared to testing to increase like a cart size? Number of products in the cart or the dollar value?
Yeah. Well, and
what are the nuances, I guess?
Well, if you're trying to increase sales, and the conversion is a sale, then revenue is king, right? I mean, you want to increase revenue, and so that's where, like with the Wine Express, actually we saw, right, a 5% conversion rate made a 41% revenue, and so you always want to track revenue. If you can track revenue on the website, optimize for revenue, because often we'll see different ones win. One will create a much higher average order value and overwhelm the other one that might have a higher conversion rate for a lower product option.
But as far as the elements that you test, they're similar?
Yeah, it's all about persuading people. There may be some different things you'll want to test when trying to optimize for revenue. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the upsells, the cross-sells, right? When do you present that to maximize order value versus the distraction of reducing conversion rates? And that's a real test that you can certainly do in that case. Yeah.
How much time is fair for a test?
Well, a simple rule for the test, you're aiming for 95% confidence level, and so when you achieve that depends totally on the amount of conversions and the difference in conversion rate between the variations. But you also want to give yourself a minimum time span. We usually do 10 days at least minimum to iron out day-of-week seasonality. But then other than that, it's the 95% confidence. And that's just a stats calculation you get online. And then the tools do it for us. Like we don't have PhDs. Yes.
Do you have a recommendation on tools, especially for people starting out?
Yep.
With testing?
Yeah, if you're wanting to test on websites, an existing website, we love Optimizely. It's a great tool. We were their first partner for providing services for them. We work closely with them. I last year went out and after Google killed Website Optimizer, which we loved, we worked with Google since 2007, built all kinds of frameworks and extensions and JavaScript libraries, and they killed it. So then we went out on a search, and I tried to find the best tool we could use, and I think Optimizely for us makes the most sense. It's easy to use, easy to implement, one script install, and it's pretty flexible in what you can test. For landing pages that are standalone outside of the website, you don't necessarily need to use Optimizely or a tool that is a JavaScript one, so you could just go and create new ones. Unbounce does that really well. Full disclosure, I'm an investor in Unbounce, but I am because I think it's actually got a lot of potential. It's a good tool. There are other tools, of course, that are building A/B testing in, like HubSpot, I think, has their own thing, and Marketo and all of that as well, but they're more expensive.
So I have a question off the menu one. Do you see any trend with the orphaned landing pages having? Do people feel? I know it's less distraction, but does it feel less real, less integrated with the rest of the web presence? Too salesy? I'm thinking more B2B. I don't know if it matters.
Yeah, Well, it depends how you execute it, I guess, because an orphaned landing page, I guess, is one that's outside of the main.com.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same navigation and feels apart from the rest of the experience.
They can be very effective because they're focused on that solution. And it, especially for a company, like we had a lot of that with Iron Mountain, where we would have microsites about one particular product group, because they've got like 10 different product lines that are completely different industries, from medical imaging storage to data backup. And so you can't have that realistically on the same landing page experience. But if it's just a single focused product category company, then maybe the Insight product page actually is the best place to test and optimize, because then you're going to reach all of the traffic with the same optimal experience. And there could be no benefit in having a standalone landing page. So it does depend on context, and that's kind of the scope of the company is probably the main question. Right? Yeah.
So I read a good article from Monmouth last week about conversion-centered design.
Right.
And this is it's a new thought that's different than web design. How would you compare and contrast like the different approaches, and what are some of the things that we should be talking to our web designers at work about how these two fields should converge?
Yeah, well, conversion-centered design is really about thinking about the objective of design. Whereas a lot of art directors, they came from art school and they're in design for the aesthetic payoff of it, right? They want something that's beautiful and that's pleasing to them. But often, aesthetic design, and they might be in an agency because they can't get a job as an artist, right? And so this is the only thing they can do. I mean, I have a lot of designer friends, so I kind of joke with them, but it's true. Like, if they could do whatever they wanted to, the font would be 3 points, right? And it would be gray on black, and there would be a beautiful image of something you can't really tell what it is, but it's got some really cool idea behind it, right? So that's designed for aesthetic's sake, and it's great, it's beautiful, and I'd love to hang it on my wall, but it's not going to sell anything. So I think conversion-centered design is thinking from a business perspective of how do we design to communicate effectively, quickly, and get the message across, create credibility, and do the things that you need to do to sell, right? Without being schlocky, because then that reduces credibility itself. So yeah, I think it's about thinking about the business. And there are designers now that care about that. And they're the ones that we are desperately seeking to find more of. So yeah, if you know of any, it's another way. Yeah, but I love that they're talking about it, and that people are starting to talk about that as a topic, and hopefully Smashing Magazine will pick up on it and start to promote that too. Yeah.
So you can see how this would be really kind of a no-brainer for big e-commerce kind of sites with a lot of catalog and stuff. What are the ones that are kind of on the margin about whether or not it's worth their while? Maybe consultancy wouldn't be as much as a big world. Where do you see that line about where it's worth jumping in and where it's not?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everyone should be testing. The amount of effort, what's kind of convenient, the amount of effort you end up putting into it, to a large extent depends on your traffic. And so if you were to get a test running now, and you're a small consultancy, and you have, 1,000, 5,000 visitors a month or something like that, it's going to take longer to get your tests complete, right? Which is okay, because by that time you'll hopefully have enough budget that you can actually do another test. So it kind of works out that way, where the amount of traffic is actually your limiter, and the volume of traffic will get you tests faster. It will also produce more revenue for you, so it tends to work sort of that way. But even if you're on a small scale, on a small budget, there's ways of getting tests running without having to go to the higher investment side of testing. I mean, you can get Optimizely, put it on the page, and get a test running with something fairly quickly, if you have an idea, okay? Test a value proposition headline. That's easy to do. And if you're in a small consultancy, you probably don't have to worry about the organizational momentum and all of those barriers, so yeah, give it a try. But if you're going to do it within a large organization, make sure you get set up properly to do it right. So there's that trade-off. Does that make sense? Yeah?